This game sucks. That's what the angry video game nerd said in his very first review ever. I had not played Castlevania at the time of his original reviews, but his videos made me genuinely curious about the series. Once I started playing them, I fell in love with the spooky presentation. These games are pretty much a horror fan's dream. It's one of gaming's finest hours, which makes Castlevania II, Simon's Quest, a very odd sequel. But why is it odd? Well, I guess I gotta start with the plot. Before anyone asks, no, I have not played Bloodstained yet. Neither Curse of the Moon or the Ritual of the Night. But I do plan to remedy that situation. The Hell House and... screw it, let's go with my own interpretation. It is year 1698, 7 years after Simon Belmont defeated Dracula in Castlevania. The battle was long and fierce, but finally Simon defeated Dracula and all seemed well. But of course it was never quite that simple. You see, just before Dracula was defeated, he managed to critically wound Simon, and on that wound cast a death curse. The curse would slowly kill the vampire hunter unless he were to gather Dracula's remains and take them to the ruins of Castlevania, where he could then remove the curse from his body. This is actually just like Zelda 2, except that game had the plot beat that they had to spill Link's blood on Ganon's ashes to revive him. So to start off, you're in a town. Unlike the first game, which had you enter Dracula's castle to start your journey, here you just start off in a peaceful town. Okay, there's people to talk to. Let's see what this guy has to say. That's good to know. Thanks. Simon starts off with a leather lip, as he always does, and nothing else. You see, the first thing you have to do is buy a white crystal and holy water. Yeah, you have to buy things in this game. It's not like how in the first game, whenever you want a sub-weapon, you can just pick it up. Here you have to buy your stuff, and hearts aren't just ammunition anymore. They are a currency to buy your stuff. That means going out in the woods and hacking away at enemies. Every time you kill an enemy, there's a chance they'll drop a heart. You pick one up, and it turns out they are worth 2 hearts. Okay, fine, but if you get this half of heart, they're worth 4 hearts, and they drop these at night, and the worst part is that you can't control the day-night transition. Yeah, that's annoying. In fact, I timed it. The amount of time it takes to change from day to night at the beginning of the game is roughly 1 minute 37 seconds. Now, that's not entirely accurate because I did have to pause the timer at various points because whenever you enter a building or pause the game, time does not pass. So you go to town, you get the white crystal and holy water, now you're ready to move on to the first mansion. Yeah, Castlevania II takes some cues from Zelda in that you have to traverse the world to find the dungeons. In between getting to those mansions are towns where you can take it easy, and the pathways which contain monsters that are out for Simon's blood. The stiff control from Castlevania 1 is back here, and of course not back from enemies. Yeah, it isn't much better. So you go to the next town and you buy the chain whip, an upgraded version of the whip. You can get the thorn whip, but it's really not recommended. You're getting a better whip right then and there, so then you enter the first mansion. The first thing you see is a blue platform rising up and down, which you can only see if you have the white crystal. Now, how the hell would you know that if you didn't have a guide? I admit I cheated because I had a guide while playing this game. The mansion is actually pretty short. The only thing you have to do is kill some enemies to build your hearts. Buy an oak stake from this guy. So now you expect some boss battle that will shake the heavens. Castlevania is well known for having epic boss battles for their time, of course. So what do I have to do here? Well, apparently I just walk up to the orb. Remember how in Castlevania 1 it was like, you beat the boss, you moved on to the next level. This game, no challenge whatsoever. Instead you have to throw an oak stake at the orb and possess a piece of Dracula. Yeah, early NES translations weren't exactly known for being very good. The sub-weapons work exactly the same as they did in the previous game. In this game, however, the holy water is often used to destroy fake blocks, or to make sure you are stepping on a real block, because otherwise you could go falling through a floor that you really don't want to do. Like before, you get 3 lives, and if you lose them all, you get a game over, which is perfectly fine because you get infinite continues, and you always respawn right where you die, so dying is really not a punishment in this game. The only real downside is that whenever you get a game over, you lose your hearts. And to make matters worse, whenever it's night, you can't get inside a building. This wouldn't be so bad, but you see, you are on a time limit. You have to beat the game within 8 days to get the best possible ending. The second mansion is mostly notable for having pits of spikes about, so you have to again go through it and make sure you buy your oak stake. I find that the chain whip comes in handy. You can find these books that are meant to give you hints as to what's at play here, but they're really not that helpful. They're so cryptic. To quote the angry video game nerd, they might as well say, "Get the power, Nintendo power." Oh man, I miss Nintendo power. Nothing was like reading through an issue of Nintendo power. The best thing to do is that after you get whatever item Dracula's body part is in the mansion, you should then take the time to grind your hearts, because time does not pass while you are in the mansion. So then comes the part where you have to cross the river. Sure, I'll take you across. Heh heh heh. Could you have not said that while sounding less evil? But there's a secret. If you have the Heart of Dracula equipped, he will take you to another area which you need to go to progress through the game. There's also these parts where you have to go through the swamp, and the swamp basically hurts you no matter what. You need laurels to be able to go through these without taking damage. This game is probably the best example of being cryptic and needing help to figure out what you're doing. For example, the part here where you kneel by the water and it spans down to reveal another pathway. How would you know that you're supposed to do that? Or this part here where you have to kneel in front of a dead end and wait for a tornado to take you to another area. Here's the thing. Games from the NES era, they were from a different time period. You didn't have the internet, so you had to get your information from people on the school bus or in magazines. Anyway, get the Morningstar whip, and now your whip is amazing. But it doesn't even stop there, because then you get the Flame Whip. Yeah, this whip is on fire! That's... wow! The game has a noted level up system like an RPG. Depending on how many enemies you kill, Simon's health bar will go up. You don't really need to do this since the game's difficulty is really on the easy side. Like here we have Death. It's time to fight the Grim Reaper! And he's pathetically easy. He does drop the golden knife, so that's good. So you get the Dracula item, and he's suddenly back, but you can just walk right past him. I guess Death knows better than to mess with Simon Belmont after the first time he beat him. Carmilla is exactly the same, just beat her real quick. Yeah, even on the verge of death, Simon Belmont is a badass. The thing I notice most about these games is how the paths tend to repeat themselves. This corridor of stairs, which still suck to walk on, by the way, because you were completely defenseless. The map was very limited, so they had to make use of what they had. It wasn't for the fact that these took place at different locations. You wouldn't have any idea that they're in different places on the map. Some of the townspeople say really weird things. Don't look into the Death Star, or you will die. The Death Star? Yeah, this was the 80s. Star Wars was still relatively fresh in people's minds. What am I saying? It never went away. Like I said, NES games had bad translation problems. It's actually a lot like Zelda 2, where the townspeople say very cryptic and unhelpful things. Bear in mind, when this game came out, there were only 2 Castlevania games. There hadn't been a standard yet. Sequels generally tried to do something new every time back then. The final strut to Dracula's castle takes you to a barren, deserted town. An interesting bit of world building. There is one person in the town, and they have this to say: "Let's live here together." No, I think not. So Castlevania is old, worn down, and doesn't have any enemies, which makes sense. This is a destroyed version of the castle from the original game. But now it's time for our hero to confront Dracula and defeat him again. And he didn't even do anything. The ending to the game depends on how long you take. The worst ending is arguably better than the middle ending, since it doesn't outright say that Simon dies. The middle ending is the worst. The best way to get the best ending is to use the password system. The best ending shows that Simon doesn't die, but Dracula is implied to come back anyway. Shouldn't this have been the worst ending with Dracula coming back? So Castlevania II Simon's Quest is a game of good and bad. It was a very early example of exploration that games like Symphony of the Night would embrace and make famous. It just had way too easy of a difficulty frame. I like challenge, at least when it's fair, but Castlevania II did set a lot of standards that the series would fall on. So if you're a Castlevania fan, I'd say play this game. It's still worth the journey.